Osmo.com live before lock show. I'll take you through 4 games today. Not a whole lot, so we'll be able to really dig deep on them, get into the mind of the guy I'm with today. I'm Chris Spags, joined by the guy you all know and love, Fast Eddie Fair. How are you doing, Eddie?
I'm very well. Yourself?
Good. I'm ready. I like these slates because we don't have to rush. We can just kind of breathe and soak in, luxuriate into the choices in front of us. One of which I said before we got on the air, and I'm going to go to it right now. I want to know, what are you doing with Giannis? What is your professional opinion as a doctor of DFS?
Yeah. Well, especially after that interlude, it's I don't have the best take on this, which is to say, I don't have the best take on this. Like, is there obviously the highest ceiling on the slate with him? Yes, the matchup isn't particularly wonderful, though he's been overall productive against Portland. He's managed to get there either through steals or blocks. He had a low-end triple-double a few times ago. You're dealing with largely the same personnel that Terry Stotts has been able to throw at him the last few times. The absence of Mo Harkless shouldn't figure heavily into it. Aminu does a lot of that defensive work, who does an above-average job. But again, Giannis is a complete and total monster. So when you're saying, do you play Giannis or don't play Giannis, I think the likely level of... I mean, there are very few teams that have a very good Giannis solution. There's a couple where I would be like, you know what, I think Giannis is popular enough tonight, where I don't think he's supremely popular, because the value... Hoarder opens up a couple things. Bembry was going to be really popular, but there were a lot of good medium-range plays where I could see people building balance. So I think your Giannis ownership as the only stud ends up... I'm curious what we have for projections for him on the ownership right now, if you want to look. Ends up with him being, somewhere in the mid-40s is my best guess.
On DK, we have him right now at about 20%.
See, then I think you go way, way, way over. Because there's one of 3 things, and this is not analysis, this is frankly stupid, but one of 3 things is going to happen with Giannis. He's gonna not get there and give you like 44, and playing him is really going to suck, and you're going to have Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and several other guys who cost $8K go off for more than him, and you're just going to be, fucksered. Or he has, your average Giannis game, which is probably the most likely. So I'd put that first one at occurring at only like 20%, 25%. Then you have probably the most likely occurrence, about, we'll say 50% of the time for nice round numbers, that Giannis gives you some number that is nice but doesn't completely blow your socks off. Something beginning with a 5. Maybe 60 isn't really that thrilling at that price, although at that point, it has a lot to do with how many of the other guys get there. If you have the other popular mid-price guys not get there, 53 out of Giannis may be more than enough to get there. You could just have a 4-game slate. All the games tend to run a little bit slow. Booker only gives you 34. Wall gives you 46. Beal gives you 35. And all the other guys tier towards the bottom of there. And you could see Giannis giving you 53 and being like, yeah, Giannis was still in the best lineup if enough of the 8K guys don't perform and enough of the 4 and 5K guys do. And then you have the possibility that he just ends shit, which is 20%, 25%, I guess, if we want them to add up to 100, but it's probably not that high. But the chance that you get 63, 68, 74, some number out of Giannis where it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, you needed to play Giannis. So if you think the ownership is as low as 20%, and again, I generally defer to our ownership rankings. Actually, something I wanted to bring up. I spent a lot of the day doing my own research and watching video and Twitter and the various things to get ready for the show. So I haven't spent as much time on Osmo.com as I would like to have over my limited time with the company. The ownership projections are amazing. I've been critical of ownership projections in the past at the various places I've worked because A, I have found them to be inaccurate, and B, inflexible. And by that I mean, if you make them a large part of your process in generating tournament lineups, which you absolutely should if they are accurate, and they're either inaccurate, that speaks for itself, we know why that's bad, but B, inflexible, so that shit changes up to lock, especially on larger slates, that all of a sudden you're left in limbo where it's like, all right, I'm using these ownership projections to build lineups, and then all of a sudden news breaks at 630, 640, 650, whatever, and radically changes shit. You're like, okay, well, I was using this own model here to generate my lineups, and all of a sudden something has changed and this isn't updating at all or well, because frequently you'll have a couple guys go out and it radically changes the slate, moves all kinds of guys on the team, on the opposing team. It gets really tricky. So between what I considered sort of sketchy reliability and accuracy and an inflexibility, which makes me nervous in something that has as many moving parts as NBA DFS, I've generally been not the biggest fan. They're really good. I've been going back looking at my last notes over the last 3 or 4 days, looking at the ownership projected by Osmo. It's remarkably spot on. Like, there's been only once or twice this year where I've been markedly different than it has been by, say a double-digit percentage, and almost every time it ends up being closer than I am. The algorithm is really dense and pulls in massive amounts of data from lots of places, and it also updates really, really quickly. So I'm really not a shill guy. I feel guilty again for my co-hosts because they generally have to do all the shilling because I'm honest to a fault. Like, the number of times that I've been censured by a boss that, you're being too honest, you just need to talk good about our shit. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Has happened quite a number of times. So hopefully when I say this, people understand that I mean it seriously and I don't casually throw praise around. It's by far the best ownership projections I've ever seen, both in terms of accuracy and in its ability to be updated and remain dependable towards lock. So, yeah, big shout out to the digital team, if you will, over here at Awesemo.com.
And speaking of shilling, I'll cut you off and I'll do the hard part. Use promo code Live Before Lock right now for 1 week free. Again, the ownership projections are really the pride and joy. They would probably be the favorite child if Alex and our senior management had to choose one. And there's something, again, that help out a lot. If you play like Josh does and you're MMEing, they are something that helps you get ahead of the field in various ways, both literally and figuratively, with your ownership projections and stuff like that. And that was actually a pretty interesting debate I thought you guys had the other day about, whether to mitigate ownership or whether to ride heavy with a guy. But either way you play it, having those projections do help a lot. So use that promo code Live Before Lock. Get in there. You also get Eddie's rankings, and Eddie's right here, and he's going to give you some thoughts right now. Tell me about the first game on the slate. Atlanta heading into Charlotte should be one of the higher paced, or possibly the highest paced game on the slate. Though for me, the Portland Milwaukee one actually looked pretty high, which I was surprised by. The Vegas total not supporting that though. So you got this one. Torian Prince is out. That's going to leave a lot of usage on the floor. Torian Prince has been gunning for the most part, not been very effective with it. I saw a article on Fantasy Labs that actually said that they thought Torian Prince was going to hold the Hawks back and they might have a better shot at covering today. So what do you think about the Hawks and who are you taking for Prince's absence?
Sorry, I'm confused. Someone said they thought Torian Prince was going to hold the team back if he played?
Yeah, that was what they were saying, was that because he's been so inefficient with his possessions, that if he played, their shots of getting closer to a cover might be. And that's Justin Fan, who is a guy who I respect a lot. He does a lot of their injury stuff and very smart guy. So I thought it was an interesting take. Prince has been pretty bad.
Yeah, but I think that's looking at a fairly smart. And obviously he's not healthy, he's not playing, but that's a strange take. He is maybe only the second best player on this team. So it's strange to me to being like, I think they'll do much better with him. I would take a much more nuanced take of, in his current form, I doubt him being out will hurt that much. That's I can clearly get behind that. If I'm, betting this and hoping they cover, I still think I want Torian Prince in there for a couple of reasons. Also, they have 2 competent defenders on the entire team, and he's one of them. So even setting aside, his shot efficiency has been bad. But if you're just hoping that, Charlotte doesn't score 1.9 points of possession, you really want Torian Prince in there. So I would, and I obviously respect Justin as well. He's got a good reputation for a good reason. I would be disinclined to agree with him, but certainly interested in the conversation. It's hard, as you said, not to be overly interested in this game. It's the only 7 o'clock game, and everything else is at least 90 minutes after lock. So the amount of information we have is going to be far less impressive. It's got a big over-under. It's got on this Atlanta team a lot of guys who are bargain priced. And on the Charlotte team, one guy who's sort of the locus of much of the usage. So, I would expect people to be a pretty big fan of this game. And again, if you're looking, I spoke the other day a bit in the game theory of looking at ordinal usage. We had, 18 teams on a slate, and someone was dismissing, ironically, the same team. Someone said, I'm not so sure about Kemba that night. That's kind of funny. Because his team is only 6th on the board in projected points in this game. Which first place was I think it was Houston, who I guarantee you watching Houston this year came up short of that mark. And it was at 120 or so. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 all came in between 116 and 117 points projected. So basically no difference. So there was almost no difference between second out of 18 teams in pace, which sounds really impressive, and sixth out of 18 teams, which sounds like, oh, that's not that great. And tonight you have almost the opposite scenario, where Charlotte is demonstrably, significantly, really on top of the field here. I mean, they're projected to score whatever it is. I think something when I looked earlier today, 7 points or something, more than the next highest team.
Yeah, I think it's down to 5 now, but yeah, projected for 121 points, which is the most on the slate.
Yeah. So that's a real. I'm curious who number two, and the other thing is I didn't look beyond that because it was all really close. Number 2 wouldn't shock me if it was Milwaukee or Portland or Washington. Any of them could be number 2. I wouldn't be surprised. I'll guess Washington, but I'm that could really come into
Milwaukee is number 2, but by 6.5 points less.
Right.
So
okay.
they're 114.5.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I'm saying is it's way the hell down there. Anyhow, talking about some of the specific plays in this game, I like Trey Young. I expect him to be popular. Obviously, coming off one of his better games, putting up the 50 burger for the second time this year, but not a matchup in which we're overly concerned about. Again, the pace is really significant. I've had people say to me, yeah, but I'm worried about his minutes in a blowout. Again, this is the game most bent to a blowout. The other 3 games are all really, really close. This game has whatever it is, a 10 to 12 point spread. I've seen that number all over the place. The other 3 games are all within like a point or 2. So I will give you that this game is the most likely to see a blowout, though by a smaller percentage than you would think. The number of even-paced teams that get blown out. I mean, I think Washington could get blown out against my JV high school team right now. Like they've shown some serious issues with chemistry on that team, but. Trey Young is one of the most blowout secure players in the NBA right now. He plays like 31 minutes in not blowouts and plays like 29 minutes in blowouts or 27 minutes in blowouts. I'll pull up a game log here. I don't have it in front of me, but I thought that was an oddly not terribly wonderful. So here, let me pull up the DK game log because that pulls in the game score. First game of the year, they got blown out against the Knicks. He played 33 minutes. Second game, we won't call it a blowout. It was a 14-point game. He played 33 minutes. Third game, they got blown out. He still played 38 minutes. Now, at some point after that, they started to bring it down a little bit. Prince got healthier, and so it sort of went into our new normal. Fourth game, stayed close, played 30 minutes. Fifth game, got blown out, played 29 minutes. Sixth game, got blown out, played 31 minutes. Seventh game, got blown out, played 27 minutes. Eighth game, stayed close, played 31 minutes. So... I don't want to play Trey Young because I think they might get blown out doesn't make a ton of sense to me. You obviously don't want them to get blown out, but it's knocking 10% off his minutes for me. So we're not worried about the defensive matchup. He's clearly the guy on this team with the largest singular upside. So I like playing him. If I'm disinclined towards him, it's just because a lot of the other value plays that I really enjoy on this slate come from his team as well, specifically Bembry and Horder, who is going to get the start. I was pretty sure that news was going to come out before lock, but that did make the most sense. They are going to start Horder, and they will keep Spellman starting at the 4. I have Horder for a few more minutes than Spellman, but significantly more ownership. Hopefully our projections agree with that analysis.
They do.
Yeah, so Spellman, got about 20 minutes last game. I think that's about what you're likely to see. I will look up that exact number. But I remember having I was not a big fan of Spellman last game. I wasn't sure the ceiling was there. And he went and had himself a pretty decent game. And he had 18 fantasy points in 20 minutes in that game, 21 fantasy points in 23 minutes a couple games before that, 17 and a half fantasy points in 14 minutes before that. Okay, that's it seems in a matchup that isn't overwhelmingly daunting. I think he gets a lot of Marvin, which isn't particularly thrilling for him. But at his price on a 4-game slate, I certainly understand if you end up playing, say, Spellman in your forward position instead of Horder. I don't know if you can play Horder at forward on DraftKings. I think he's 2 and 3 eligible. He's just 2 eligible. That's fine.
Yep.
It's Bazemore that's 2 and 3. So I really like Horder. I project him for 4 minutes there. Points per dollar, he's probably your more compelling cashy sort of value. He's 33 on DK, so again, that's way towards the bottom. FanDuel, he's 36, and he's puntable, and he's a shooting guard where you don't know who you want to take after Booker really anyway, so I really don't have any issue with you playing Kevin Horder anywhere, But I do think he is popular enough, and it's Kevin Huerter. This is not a known fantasy quantity. So certainly if you're looking for easy ways to get away from the chalk, moving off him, I think will help a lot. Do we have him for like 30% owned?
24%. The big guy currently projected, which I'm hoping comes down because I think this ownership was done before the announcement that Huerter was starting. Bembry currently projected for 51% on DraftKings, which I would like to see come down because I think Bembry is a pretty great play too.
Yeah, I'm thrilled with Bembry. He's been productive in lots of different ways. Basically gets, what can be considered some time at the backup point, some negative correlation with Jeremy Lin, who's another guy we'll get to in a minute here, but has been really consistently productive. We had the one massive game against Dallas? He had a massive game against somebody where he put up randomly 40 fantasy points.
Oh, yeah, he had like 12 rebounds, 14 rebounds, something like that.
Yeah, he had, I believe, 15 or something rebounds. He had a really stupid number.
Yeah,
like a completely Jeremy Lamb, like, how did that happen type game. He's a very good rebounder for a guard, but, he's going to average that out to, I would think, 5. So, yeah, the 15 or whatever he got in that game was a little bit ridiculous. But generally, most games is running out there playing 22, 24 minutes and giving you 20 to 25 fantasy points, and it's still really cheap. His price is getting up there on FanDuel, but 4,300 on DK, again, points per dollar. Him and Huerter check a lot of boxes if you're trying to get Giannis in there.
Any Bazemore for you?
Sure. If you're not playing, I do like playing him if you're not game stacking the game and you are playing Trey Young, I'm probably moving elsewhere, especially on DK where he's still under 6K. He'll be fairly popular. I think you get 20% out of him on DraftKings, I'm guessing is about the number. But has a massive upside. He has 2 40-plus fantasy point games this year. This isn't a spot. I think so. I will pull up a game log to make sure I'm not speaking out of my butt there. I lied. He has a 39 and a 55, and then a 33 after that. But again, very significant upside spot. And the thing we really want to point out here is all these guys are really cheap, and they are picking up a fairly significant amount of Torian Prince usage and minutes. So, just objectively, points per dollar per spot. Trey Young, Kent Bazemore, DeAndre Bembry, Jeremy Lin, if we get 23-minute Jeremy Lin and not 15-minute Jeremy Lin, Amari Spellman, Alex Len, Dwayne Dedman, Kevin Huerter. All those guys are just too cheap. Like, relative to the, if you mathed it out day after day after day, you would find out that on DraftKings, it's whatever it ends up being, $216 for fantasy point. You're spending well less than that on almost every one of these guys when you look at their projected prices, especially on DraftKings, where they're just really cheap. You can punt either center. I think Len is the spot I would rather go to between them. Priced very similarly everywhere, but on DK, they're both in the mid-4s. On FanDuel, they're both in the mid-5s. They're just tournament guys for me. I think it's a better spot to spend up. And if I'm, value centering, I think I'd probably actually Cody Zeller before either of these guys if I'm punting down in cash. But they're both tournament guys who can get a big upside. Dedman has been close to cracking it open a couple times recently and can just do the whole blocks and threes type deal. Last game he was really good and had 18 or 19 at the half. Ended with, I think, just a hair shy 30. Here it is, 29. So, it's a really interesting spot in that there are only 8 teams playing, and there's like 10 centers I like. Like, there's 10 centers I think you can at least make a reasonably strong argument for in tournaments. Can you play 4 Hawks on FanDuel cash? Yes. I don't think 4 would be the number I'd be targeting. I believe Huerter, Bembry, and Young make reasonable amounts of cash sense. Young, obviously a volatile quantity. We can certainly see him failing, but just generally underpriced, and you can detect that by the price being so close to the DK price. So those 3 guys make a lot of sense in cash. Beyond that, you could be like second punting a Jeremy Lin, or, at that point, those 3 in cash make a lot of sense. The 4th one strikes me as offhand a little querulous, but I'm guessing you're playing Giannis, which makes sense as a cash play, and then maybe you have like Len in there at the center. So I wouldn't completely dismiss having those 4. Can you play Bembry and Huerter in the same lineup? Yeah, absolutely. They're at their combined 8K. You ignore... The cheaper guys are, the more you ignore the I'm worried about the negative correlation between them, and the fewer games that are on the slate, the more you ignore the I'm worried about the negative correlation between these 2 guys. So 2
separate units too, and they're also they're effective per minute in their own ways. They both do a pretty decent job getting some rebounds and going after the ball. So
yeah,
I would.
I am literally zero concerned about that. Are we concerned about the Bembry ownership? Bembry is safer for Herter than me. I probably am more interested in pivoting off Herter than Bembry. Certainly Bembry isn't a must play. So if you're, building 10 lineups and you find out, oh crap, I only have 3 Bembrys, I wouldn't fret. I think that's just fine. The odds that he goes nuts and delivers a massive game here are limited, obviously, but he's even a safer quantity, carries a more likely upside than Herter, I think, carries probably still more minutes than Herter, so just in a vacuum, if I'm moving off one of these two guys tonight, I'm more likely to move off Herter than Bembry at this juncture.
What about the Charlotte side? We're currently projecting Kemba to have the most ownership over there, but Jeremy Lamb, I think we're a little low on where Jeremy Lamb is going to be. We have him at 11% on DK, and he's been doing well his last couple outings, and those were in blowouts too. Obviously, with the Atlanta pace, he should be able to pick up some more rebounds, get some more shots up. I think it benefits him. It probably benefits Batum. And it should benefit Kemba, but Kemba's been usage down lately. I think he's in the 20s for his last 3 games. What are you doing about the Charlotte side?
Yeah, teams have schemed more to stop Kemba. And he's been more, this is, again, a simplification, but there's just been more times he's like, oh, okay, they're letting Batum get open shots. He can have them. There were a few games there where they weren't quite as hard trapping him, and he wasn't dealing with quite such a negative situation. And just the sheer usage he was getting his, and he just running the damn show. There were other times where, we'll put Tony Parker out there with him, and I'll just let him go, and I'll facilitate a little bit more. So he's been certainly not laid back, but you were getting 27% usage games as opposed to 40% usage games. So I find it reasonably unlikely that Lloyd Pierce works out a very good anti-Kemba scheme here. So I like him a lot. My biggest issue with playing Kemba Walker is sort of the opportunity cost. I like a lot of point guards. On both FanDuel and DraftKings, there's a lot of point guards I find very well priced, and he's going to be really popular, as he should be, against Atlanta, whose defense is specious, we'll say, and whose pace is really significant. You would think this is a spot where he can put up just a massive number, so... And also he's in this very early game, which is really significant on tonight's slate. So yeah, there's no reason not to play Kemba. But he is going to be. Again, you said you had him at the most popular. Is he like 30%?
We have him at 24% versus 19 for Nicolas Batum and 11 for Jeremy Lamb.
Yeah, I think Batum, again, we're losing some of the price steal. I like Batum. I like what he can do. I like having Torian Prince out. That is going to help him a fair amount. I think, when the starting lineups go, I do think you have Trey try to guard Kemba pretty straight up to start. I'll be interested to see how that goes. And again, that's something you can narrative around. If you think they take basically their only above average defender left on the court to start this game, I guess we'll add Marvin there too, but certainly in the backcourt, and they take Bazemore and tell him to try to stick on Kemba, then you can be looking at a really nice Jeremy Lamb game. So I do think those guys have a greater than average amount of negative correlation with each other because of how polarized the defensive ability of this Atlanta team is going to be. So I don't have a problem playing them both. I would certainly want to be running it back with Trey Young and another Hawk or something, but I do think they are a little more negatively correlated than normal. Nick Batum, honestly, there are very few players we can expect to see minutes beginning with a 2 or a 3 tonight that aren't in play in tournaments. It's a 4-game slate. So, and it is difficult to better specify statements than I think he's just fine in tournaments. Nick Batum is just fine in tournaments. If you're telling me you think he's as highly owned as, 15, 18, 20%, I'm more inclined to go to other guys with his price up a bit. When he was 5,200, 5,300, that was nice. Because even if he has sort of a poor game, he could fall ass backwards into 25. That didn't hurt me that much. And if he got 30, you were legit happy. And there was still 40-point upside. Now he's 6,500, 6,700. He's playing the Hawks. There's all the goddamn upside in the world. If they do try to isolate Kemba, he's probably the most likely guy to throw out a ceiling game. So sure, absolutely nothing wrong with playing Nick Batum. But if he goes back into, I'm sort of laid back Nick Batum, I'm going to take 3 shots a half and stand in the corner a lot and focus on my defense, then yeah, 15, 18, 20%, I'm a little more inclined towards going under than over. So it really depends where you think your ownership lands and how much you like Kemba. But I do think it's going to require something pretty goddamn strange to not get a nice game out of either Kemba or Lamb or Batum in here. One of these guys has to do something pretty significant against Atlanta, you would think. So if you're looking at any lineups on a slate this short, with the only game we have certainty in, with a really nice 230 plus pace, I'm thinking you're going to want to have Kemba or Lamb or Batum in most of your lineups. I don't think you get monster ceiling offensive game out of the other starters who are Marvin and Cody. So, if you're playing one lineup or something, I would be concerned if you find your lineup had no Batum, no Lamb, and no Walker. This team is going to score probably 115 points, maybe 120, maybe 135 or something. I mean, the Hawks have certainly given it up huge a couple of times. I would have some concern if I was playing one lineup and I'm like, I have no Charlotte guys who can actually score the ball. And then you get into the bench guys, in which I think at least 4 are playable. Tony Parker's had a couple real, hey, look, Tony Parker's ceiling games this year, and he can still play basketball at a pretty high level. Getting old is about recovery, I can tell you, much more so than still being able to play the game. You run me out there for 20 minutes once a month, I'm just as good as I was 10 years ago. Anything beyond that, it starts to come downhill pretty quickly. So looking at the 4 bench guys I would have interest in, probably my favorite is going to be site dependent. On DraftKings, my favorite would probably be Tony Parker. My second favorite would probably be Malik Monk. On FanDuel, I'm probably... MKG?
No MKG versus a terrible rebounding team who has nobody who's really going to guard him, and he could end up...
That's my number one on FanDuel. That's where I was going.
Okay.
DK is a few hundred more. FanDuel, MKG is only 4,100. The price is cheaper. Fills in those really crappy 3 and 4 positions on FanDuel tonight. Like, the 1 and the 5 are stacked. The 2 is okay, but the 3 and the 4 on FanDuel. So I really like MKG on FanDuel. DK, I'm probably rather roll out Tony Parker and maybe even Malik Monk. And I don't think Hernan Gomez is out of play here. He has taken back that second role as the backup center there, and obviously that portends being able to pick up a pretty... Okay, got it. Jeez. Significant upside in this matchup with Atlanta, but you get 2 fouls on Cody Zembler? On Cody
Not even
Zembler?
close.
I'm just making up names now.
Kemba and Cody Zeller merged in their consciousness into one.
That must be it. It's
Cody Zembler.
Cody Zembler. I hope that becomes a thing, and Cody makes an all-star game somehow, and it's Cody Zembler revolutionized the offense. And anyway,
Yeah.
I think
we covered this one.
You get 2 fouls, Cody Zeller against Alex Len in 5 minutes, which is not impossible. And then all of a sudden, wow, you get 25 minutes of Hernan Gomez, who would absolutely eat in this spot.
Yes.
So he's probably the 9th guy on this Charlotte team I would want some exposure to. But I do think it is appropriate to have a lot of this game. You can certainly move away from it because everyone's going to have a lot of this game. But I have pretty strong and compelling interest to that end.
Here's another one that should be a little closer. Got the Wizards going into Dallas for a matchup with the Mavericks. John Wall and Bradley Beal projected to be pretty highly owned on that side. Dwight Howard not far behind. On the Mavs side, you got DeAndre Jordan, Luka Doncic, a little banged up, but is in the lineup. Pretty good amount of ownership on everybody over here, too. Luka, the lowest owned guy, projected by the ownership at Osmo.com, which, again, promo code live before lock it on there, as well as the premium Slack, so you get your questions answered first. But yeah, it's an interesting game here. Should be close, but maybe... I don't know. It's chalky, but it's not too chalky, is what it seems like to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I like this game a lot. I think it will be a little underowned where I think it should be. I like a lot of guys in this game. I really like all the starters in tournaments for the Wizards, and I don't much like anybody else. The prices on everyone else have sort of come up, and ends up being a little site dependent, but they're running their starters out mad minutes. And they're priced very well. Most of them, especially on DraftKings, as you alluded to, Wall and Beal and Porter are all, 4 digits cheaper over there. Markieff Morris is still sort of oddly way too cheap on FanDuel, and I do think he is probably your best value play, even in cash and tournaments at power forward on FanDuel. And I like Dwight Howard as well, who I think... still gets 30-plus minutes tonight. I think that's the most likely scenario. Again, the first game even where he only got 23 or whatever, that game ended up being a blowout, and this team gets blown out quite a bit, as I mentioned. But I really like all 5 starters. Again, Otto Porter I would much rather play on DK at 5,100, but there's not a lot of guys who have 40-point upside who you're going to get at around single-digit ownership tonight. And Otto Porter, I'm curious what our ownership projections have him at, since... You apparently have him up.
We have him at 13% right now
13?
on DK.
Okay, yeah, I figured it might be a hair over single digits, but that's about the number there, especially if you end up with a lineup construction that doesn't have Beal or Wall in it. I really like finding some $5,100 Otto Porter in your life. Markieff, again, even with Dwight back, is getting a lot of time. It's the minutes off the bench guys who are ceding this time. It's a 4-game slate. You want to play Jeff Green? You can play Jeff Green. It's a 4-game slate. You want to play Kelly Oubre? Probably still going to get minutes into the 20s. Feel free, but I'm really inclined to play the starters on this team. On FanDuel, Beal and Wall still project very nicely for me, but the prices are not as, over the moon outstanding as they are looking at DraftKings. But you are going to have a lot of ownership on the cheaper point guard, so getting John Wall in what is a pretty stellar matchup on FanDuel at his 10,000 whatever the hell, where he's only going to be owned, I'll say we have 16% John Wall
for John Wall, 32.
32. Hold
Yep.
on. Let me look at my point guards on FanDuel again, because somebody I must like.
Oh, for DK is what I was saying. Sorry.
I was saying for FanDuel.
Okay. Well, sorry. Oh man.
No, I was about to say, really, I wouldn't think at that number he'd get up there.
Yeah, no. I only have DK on my Excel sheet, my fancy little sheet.
That's okay. Then I shall cease bothering you with that question.
FanDuel. DraftKings rules. FanDuel rules. That's what we say.
Okay.
For rivalry games.
Fair enough. But he's, you can get Lillard for a few $100 less. You can get Kemba for $1,200 less on FanDuel. So I like John Wall in tournaments on both sites. I think DK is certainly very, very cash viable. Same thing with Beal. He's just too cheap. But again, on FanDuel, he makes an excellent pivot off a more than doubly owned Devin Booker at those prices. Someone is saying 21% on FanDuel. Okay, I think, what did I say, 16, 18, something like that? So
yeah, you're close.
We're in the same ballpark. And again, you have to play 2 there, obviously. So when there are only, 9 playable point guards or so, that's still well under average for a point guard on this slate. So,
Zach Saldana asking, would there be an issue for you playing Beal and Wall together?
I'm wanting to run it back with Doncic or Dennis Smith Jr. or DeAndre, or I'm wanting to make sure I have some Dallas exposure there. But no, again, as far as the game theory goes, and this is something I end up pointing out a lot, but when you are dealing with the fewer games are in a slate, the better idea it is to stack a game. And people, I don't think, really get that. It makes sense intuitively, but there's still a lot of people who on 11-game slates are like, what do you think about stacking this game? And usually on a 10, 11, 12-game slate, my answer is I would not do that beyond. But by stacking, you want to play 3 guys from it? Sure. 4? Maybe. But on a 1, 2, on a 2, 3, 4-game slate, if you're playing 6 guys from one game, that actually makes a lot of sense. Around 5, 6 games on the slate, then it's meh, and around 7, 8, 9, 10, long term, it's just a bad strategy. Whenever you stack a game, your advantage is that game becomes significant compared to the other ones. Either you get, Knicks Bulls double overtime, which proves that you still can stack a game. And last night, even Pistons Heat made a great stack. It can work out for you, but the odds of it working out for you go way, way up when there are fewer games in the slate in general. Your advantage of hoping your game goes off is much more likely to occur relative to the other games. Whenever you have more points of ordination in something, if you have 11 games, the odds are you're going to get a pretty significant distribution with no great gap between the games. When you have 4 games, you can get game 2, game 3, game 4. That's much more likely to occur that you have a truly superlative game that you would want to be overexposed to, that gives you a tournament-winning massive upside, than if there are 11 games. It's just basic mathematics. And again, what you sacrifice is much greater the larger the slate. If you stack a game tonight and you say, okay, I'm only taking 2 people from the other 3 games, okay, that's a sacrifice. That's what you're giving up. You're limiting your choices, and you're sucking down the potentiality for some negative correlation with there can only be so many points scored in one game. But that's a lot better than sucking down, I'm only taking 2 guys from these other 11 games. So it ends up being more advantageous and less disadvantageous, if that makes any sense, stacking on shorter games. So to go all the way back to the question, if you want to play Wall and Beal, yeah, I think that's great. You absolutely could have this game turned into a quasi-shootout. It's not hard to imagine if each of these teams put up 120 points in regulation or overtime, Wall and Beal doing the majority of the lifting for this team in that scenario. Just, it would make very little sense to play Wall and Beal and none of the significantly priced Mavericks.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Last question on the Wizards side before we move on to the rest. Rin Pack asking, is Howard the FanDuel cash game center? How cashy do you feel like Dwight Howard is today?
I think he's really strong. He might be my favorite cash game center. I'd have to look at this for a second. FanDuel is really interesting. You can make an argument in cash for all 4 of the top centers. It's so let's just talk about centers for a little bit here. DeAndre Jordan is sort of the cashy option here. Now, I would generally just rather save $1,800 on FanDuel and maybe $1,800 on DK too. They might be 79 and 61 there. But I would generally rather save $1,800 and play Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard has generally played very well against DeAndre Jordan. Just heads up, over the years, Dwight Howard has outscored DeAndre Jordan in their times against the court on the court against each other. If you look that up, I'm fairly confident to certain that is the case. It has been a matchup that hasn't been good for DeAndre and has been okay for Dwight, who has also he had a 36-26 game against DeAndre once. I remember he has had some truly stupid games against DeAndre Jordan and generally does a little better than DeAndre does versus him. Now, the only reason I can see playing DeAndre Jordan instead of Dwight Howard in cash is Dwight Howard's minutes are a little more curious, and Dwight Howard's conditioning and just overall health and, how is his ass is a whole separate thing.
He can't sit in a chair during games. He lays on his belly.
Yeah. That's a bad beat there. He lays on his belly. I didn't know he was face down, ass up.
Like a girl on the phone talking to her crush in an 80s movie.
That's like arms under the chin. It's like that's
yeah. It's pretty adorable, for being honest. But
yeah, I was gonna say that's cute. That's cute. That's face down, ass up. That's the way we like to watch NBA basketball. Yeah. So if you're playing DeAndre over Dwight, you're doing it because DeAndre has a really it's a little site dependent. I probably prefer DeAndre Ayton. It's hard for me to see playing DeAndre Jordan in cash, I think, because I think I just prefer DeAndre Ayton a hair. The matchup is legitimately better. He gets a little more time in blowouts. So I probably would actually limit my exposure in cash to those guys. So again, Dwight I like a little better than DeAndre, but there is some more uncertainty there, and that's what you're paying for that $1,800 is you're sucking up some uncertainty. A real question we have to ask ourselves every day is it worth it, Jusuf Nurkic? I think he's in a pretty good spot here. They've given him time against Milwaukee, against Brook Lopez, and he's generally smashed Milwaukee and smashed Brook Lopez. The concern looking at the matchup, which I have previously said in similar spots against Brook Lopez, is, look, I'm worried Brook Lopez pulls him out and you end up with either, in the past, Ed Davis, or you end up with Zach Collins running around out there because, Nurkic's weakness is defending guys around the three-point line. It didn't happen the last couple times. Nurkic is getting significant 30-esque minutes against Brook Lopez in this matchup and having very big fantasy games, which is not surprising because Nurkic will do that almost any time you give him 30-plus minutes. And you'd like that even more to happen at this stop against Milwaukee than, say, against the Lakers, because against the Lakers, you could kind of gouge them everywhere. Against Milwaukee, their backcourt defense is really, really solid. So you're a little more inclined to dump it down low. So Nurkic, again, like Dwight Howard, you're saving a little money off DeAndre Ayton, but I like the spot for him. There's still a significant chance obviously everyone has a chance of injury or foul trouble, but gets blown off the court because Brook Lopez gets going early and makes a few three-pointers and they make a switch. That could happen. I don't think there's quite as much uncertainty as Dwight Howard, but there's not quite as much as a discount as Dwight Howard. So it's site-dependent, but that's sort of my take on Ayton, Nurkic, Howard. All three of those guys make some amount of sense in cash for me based on those numbers. I'm probably most inclined towards Howard if I'm playing Giannis and Ayton if I'm not. That's how I will answer the question. There's a lot of variables there, but hopefully that was enough data to make your head spin for a little.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tell me about the Dallas side a little more. You talked about DeAndre Jordan a little bit, but you got Luka over there. Dennis Smith projected to be the highest owned guy on that side on DraftKings. His price there probably a little too tantalizing for some people to avoid, but it's worth. Smith's just not as good in terms of assist rate and rebounding as he was last year. It's kind of a Luka team now more than a Dennis Smith team, and I'm curious, what do you think about this side?
Yeah, this is normally a spot where I would want to be all Kent Bazemore with Dennis Smith and be like, look, I don't think the ownership is that great. I really think, there is a chance for an upside game here. And he's absolutely in play, but I do expect his ownership to be significant, and I'm more inclined to just let it go, I think. Even on DK where he's 56, 5,700, whatever number he ended up coming in at, the matchup isn't one I particularly like with John Wall. I think they played both games last year. I remember one clearly, and it wasn't terribly great. I'll look up the individual, but regardless of what happened in a small sample size, not a spot I'm particularly looking to target there. You do still have an increased usage in Wesley Matthews. You have Harrison Barnes back, who is basically just a scorer on this team, so he's doing his thing. And you have Luka Doncic out there, who can just sort of run the team and ends up being more the real point, or at least some of the real point. And you end up having DeAndre Jordan, who can have ceiling games and end up taking 15 shots as opposed to the 7 you expect out of him. So there's a lot of ways that can fail. Then you have just, Berea's doing well off the bench. There's just enough ways that I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll just let it go. I'm more inclined to do that than say I'm going to play him. Now, that being said, there's obviously nothing wrong with playing $5,700 Dennis Smith Jr. Of course, on a 4-game slate, he can put up 37 and be really, really good. If you're asking me, I'd be more inclined to underweight it than overweight it for that reason. It's not the world's best Wes Matz spot. I have no problem having some exposure to it. Again, you're just hoping 2 steals and 4 3-pointers, but not a ton of great analysis to throw at it there. Harrison Barnes still projects as a very safe play. Not sure how much ceiling he's carrying these days, but the ceiling play is spending up and spending, Devin Booker type money on Luka Doncic. Like that is a as strong of a tournament play as you can get playing Luka Doncic or eventually Karis LeVert or some of those guys over Devin Booker. Devin Booker is just too cheap for in the matchup, the raw massive upside he can throw out here. But he can still mess up. We don't know if he's still 100% healthy, foul trouble, etc. If Luka outscores him, you're going to get Luka at, I would think, about a third the ownership or, certainly
about half on DK, but definitely still a noteworthy discount.
Yeah.
One thing to note
FanDuel even more significant, I think, but it's interesting. You can play them both on FanDuel. They're both 8K. And Booker is underpriced. Luka is appropriately priced. So that is, Devin Booker is, in my opinion, just a better point per dollar play. He's a better cash play. But I do think that's a very strong lineup where you are taking a guy on a small slate who does have the upside. I certainly don't hate the matchup. I can really get going in there against those wings. So I like Luka a ton in tournaments, but is it just a worse play than, say, Devin Booker in cash?
Yeah, last thing I would want to note, because it's an interesting fact to me, Wizards obviously been one of the worst teams. I think we've talked about it on a bunch of these shows and rebounding so far this year. And Dwight coming in hasn't really helped them out so far yet, which I think, a little counterintuitive, but they haven't really regressed anything better. So I think that does add a little credence to playing DeAndre Jordan if you are trying to go that way. Brooklyn at Phoenix. It is for me, it's the projected lowest pace game on the slate, which I think is always surprising for people, but Suns playing at a very low pace. The Nets also playing at a pretty low pace as well. Pretty bad defensive game, though, on both sides. Phoenix is projected for 6 points above their season average. Brooklyn pretty flat with theirs. Chalkiest guys here, we're looking at Ayton, Booker, Isaiah Cannon expected to pick up a bunch of ownership. And on the Nets side, Hollis Jefferson seems to be the chalkiest play. What are you doing with this one, Eddie?
I'm worried about Hollis Jefferson. Some of the minutes he picked up in the last game were due to significant foul trouble to Dudley? Someone got in foul trouble and he picked up extra time. He came in well earlier than I expected last game. So I think a lot of people are like, he's coming back from injury and he got this many minutes and then a bit more and then finally got 30. Now he plays 30 minutes every day. I don't think he averages 30 minutes from this point out for the rest of the year if he stays perfectly healthy. So I do think that was a bit of an abnormal ceiling game. Now, Phoenix, certainly not a bad matchup. So, especially on FanDuel where you have to play 2. There's nothing wrong with playing Rondé Hollis Jefferson. But, again, guys can be really, really owned. Fine to play. Fine not to play just based on the fact that I'm not shocked if you randomly get a not less than 30 fantasy point game out of him here and he's really significantly owned. Again, the price is very appealing on both sides. Don't have a hot take there. He is cheap enough. Yes, he can maul the shit out of that price. Clearly, even getting like 30 on this slate is probably pretty good when he's 48 on DK and 53 on FanDuel. Feel free. Although on FanDuel, I think outright just prefer Markieff Morris. Yeah, so that's I think he's fine to play, fine to fade. Don't have really a strong take there. I like playing Spencer Dinwiddie in tournaments. The ownership should be fairly low, and he or DAngelo Russell will have a big game here. And, DAngelo costs more. Hopefully the ownership is kind of similar. I expect it to be pretty low on both guys. But I like a Spencer Dinwiddie.
Higher for DAngelo, but not by as much as I would think.
It's what?
14. It's 14% for DAngelo to 8% for Spencer on DK.
Yeah, I think I was guessing DAngelo would be a little bit higher, and he's obviously a little bit more expensive, and I don't project the ceiling for that much higher. It's higher. I mean, Dinwiddie is more limited as a player, but I would rather play Dinwiddie than DAngelo Russell on this slate. I have no issue playing Karis LeVert. Same thing on FanDuel where he's $8,000. He can get there. Phoenix we like. Booker we like as a micro matchup defensively, or whether they throw. I think you quite possibly end up with a decent bit of a Reza on him. That's
what I worry about a little.
Right. That's not and exactly, and I worry about it a little bit. It's not a giant concern. I should really speed up. Somehow on a 4-game slate, I'm not getting shit done, which is amazing. I just talk too much. But okay, so going to the quick and dirties here. Russell Grayton, there's none of the starters aren't reasonable in tournaments. Even Jared Dudley. I'm not a big playing Jared Dudley guy, but he's 3-2 and 3-6 or whatever it is on the various sites.
Jared Dudley revenge game.
Well, yeah, he's got a few of those, but that is Jared Dudley revenge game. I don't think he left vengefully. He got paid reasonably, but
no, he loves everybody. He's a happy guy.
Yeah, he's milk dud. He's good. I left Alan Crabb in my player pool. Again, if you check my rankings on the website, that is literally also my player pool. So if I was building 150 lineups, these are the players I would use. If they're not on that list, they were guys I thought were a little far. The last guy in the Nets to make the list was Alan Crabb. Can bang out some plays. Actually, I might have left Shabazz Napier on there because they randomly give him more time than they should. And last game, he was really taking an assertive role, banged out a couple threes back to back. Would not shock me to see him low post guy randomly gets 25. So I'd have one share of him in about 150. Looking over at the Suns, Cannon certainly deserves to be chalk. Fine if you play it, fine if you don't. Again, the uncertainty is just he can be a really minor guy in this team. TJ Warren is back. That makes me a little less excited for Cannon, believe it or not, because now you just have, he's really the fifth option on offense. But they'd like to give him 32 minutes to start for whatever the hell reason. So certainly Cannon. There is some uncertainty with his health. There's some uncertainty with, just one of these days they're going to be like, let's give Melton 20 minutes. Like that will just happen randomly at some point this year, I think. Probably in the near future. I'm not going to Kobo. I'm not going to Melton. I'm not going to Josh Jackson at this point, although Josh Jackson, I think, in your player pool on a 4-game slate does make some sense. He's basically the minimum and, again, has been so bad as a basketball player for the last 10 days. We don't have time for me to unleash the string of adjectives I would use to describe his play recently, but it's been bad. Ariza makes
Booker gets hurt. That's, I think, the way that Jackson has value. That's about it.
Yeah, that's. I mean, you would think so, but no, he still has value. Like he costs 3.5 and 3.6 or whatever the hell Josh Jackson costs. He can still just randomly get 24. Like that can just happen. He's a shooter. He hasn't managed to do it yet, but this is Brooklyn. Like you'd have to think there is some chance he just randomly pops off. Like he still has value the same way Alan Crabb has value. Where it's just like, yep, he was really productive in his 22 minutes. I do think that is a possibility, even if nobody gets hurt. But anyhow, Josh Jackson would make his way into my pool. I'd play him over, say, Ryan Anderson, for example. But anyhow, Warren in a good spot. I like Warren for his reduced ownership due to his health issues, which if he's playing and his back gets all nice and warmy, that's great. And DeAndre Ayton, strong on FanDuel and very, very strong on DK at $7,500, gets blowout time. Devin Booker also very strong. So yes, those two guys should lead the way. Cannon even playable in cash. Warren probably playable in cash on some sites due to the reduced price. And then Trevor Ariza just fine in tournaments. Josh Jackson fine in tournaments. Bridges fine in tournaments. Actually, another guy who isn't getting talked about a lot. Saw a couple player lists today where he wasn't even listed on other sites. I'd be pretty excited about getting Bridges at 2% owned today. So Bridges.
He's getting some run. He's getting run over Ryan Anderson lately. I think it's something to watch. Not a high usage rate though, so
So I almost didn't mention him, but yeah, Bridges makes sense as another pivoting off, say, Kevin Huerter and other guys in that $3,500 range, which is where I imagine where he lands. Didn't check his price specifically, but
last game on the slate, Milwaukee heading into Portland. This game, to me, has an adjusted pace, which is just narrowly behind the Hawks and Hornets.
This is weird,
but the Vegas. Yeah, if you average them out, they're at 106, and Hawks Hornets would be at 106.1. So,
yeah, but it's it's really interesting because both these teams are really good defensively. Like these teams are both top 7 at the worst in defensive rating.
Yeah, Milwaukee giving up a 40% field goal percentage from the floor, 32% from 3, both of which are towards the bottom of the league.
Yeah, no, they're both really good defensive teams, but the pace has been significant this year in the offensive efficiency of a lot of teams. These two teams. perfectly wonderful examples of we're going to shoot a lot of threes this year. Like this is very Moneyball-esque, and everyone else has figured it out a few years later. So everyone went, oh yeah, that whole Rockets Warriors thing works. Let's take threes and layups. And so they're really building. I mean, again, their entire role for Evan Turner this year was based on making sure they didn't screw that up and end up taking all kinds of jump shots again. So quick takes on this game. I like Eric Bledsoe a fair amount. I think he's a pretty strong tournament play. I would rather play him than DAngelo Russell was a comment I thought I saw fly by me. Whether or not I had Giannis, I would rather go with Bledsoe. I feel a little safer with it. He contributes in a number of ways. I like his micro matchup a lot. He has just legit outscored Damian Lillard at least a couple times off the top of my head. Not a dominating spot. Brogdon's certainly in playing tournaments and certainly in playing cash. He's just going to do his thing again. Middleton, close to a necessity for me if you don't have Giannis. Someone's going to have to score on this team, and it's probably going to be Middleton if it isn't Giannis. And just still a little too cheap around 7K. And Brolo still makes sense in tournaments at a price in the fours. Can just bang out some threes. Again, you're hoping he gets mid-20s in minutes and not randomly 18, 19.
Bizarrely good track record versus Portland too, which might not matter at this point, but every game he's had in the last 3 years versus Portland has exceeded value.
No, it does, and it does matter at this point because this is a very similar team. This is a Terry Stotts coached Aminu at the 4, Nurkic at the 5 Trailblazers team. That's a lot of consistency when you're looking at what Brolo can do. The inconsistency is he has moved around from team to team, so we're less sure about how he's going to be deployed, but it's perfectly worth noting that he's been good at Portland in the past. I don't mind Ersan on DK where he's 4,200. Again, with everyone else in, he gets completely forgotten. That's a mistake. He can get mid-20 minutes, and he can crack that number pretty well on DK. FanDuel, I don't think I'm looking at Ursanity, but DK, that makes some sense. I think you can play John Henson on either site. Hasn't had his big game in the last week or so. Minutes have been a little more fractious. Had a 9-minute game and a 10-minute game in there, but bounced back up to 19 last game. And just a guy who can pick up a giant pile of blocks. And if you looked at his first 5 games this season, he had a 27, a 28, and a 30. And any of those numbers around 4K at a really weak power forward position make him pretty exciting in tournaments for me. So I legit like John Henson in tournaments. I would have like 10%. If I had 150, I would try to overweight the field on that. Might even have to go like 15% to get there. Ersan on DK, Brolo anywhere, Giannis, we discussed heavily at the beginning. I won't go back into again. So yeah, looking at the Trailblazers, I generally like Wall more than Lillard, all things taken together. I'm a believer in this Bucks defense. I will be surprised if Lillard gashes them. That doesn't mean I don't think he'll be solid, but the fact that I view a 70-point game out of him, which on any given night is a 8% likelihood, is a 3% likelihood against this Milwaukee team, makes me a little more concerned about him, because whenever you spend 10K on a guy, you want some chance that he just busts shit wide open for you. McCollum's still cheaper than we're used to seeing him, but a certain amount of that is just his role in this offense, which is sort of only as off-ball, spot-up shooter kind of guy. That limits it a little bit. I guess you can Jake Layman. It's a 4-game slate. Again, most likely he's going to play a dozen minutes and get the start and then get the hell out of there. And God forbid they ever manage to get him on Giannis. You should have to wear a helmet just to watch that highlight. But it's not going to be pretty. That's the other reason it's fun to roster Giannis tonight. You just get to watch this game, which is the late game, and just be like, kill things, big guy, which is always, it sounds crazy, but you should be enjoying yourself. Minu makes sense on FanDuel, obviously. DK, a little less appealing, where, again, the multi-position eligibility forces your hand much less, but will be pretty owned on FanDuel, I think, and for a decent reason. They're going to need him out there to do some time on Giannis. I discussed Nurkic already extensively. Evan Turner, I legit like as a small forward guy in tournaments or even in cash on FanDuel at 4,400. Zach Collins, I think, makes a lot of sense. Correlated with Brook Lopez, makes a lot of sense. Not correlated with Yusuf Nurkic. That's pretty straightforward. And, Stauskas in my player pool. I think I left Seth Curry and Caleb Swanigan in there, but those would literally be, 1 in 150s for me, where it's a 4-game slate. Both of them have a ceiling and limited minutes, but I like, Stauskas well more than those two guys, and I don't like Stauskas that much. So I'm done.
All right, let's hit some quick either-ors for the premium Slack. First, Scotty asking Eric Bledsoe or DAngelo Russell. Who would you go with?
Bledsoe.
Bembry or Joe Harris for FanDuel GPP?
Joe Harris will have significantly lower ownership. It depends on the rest of your team. The answer to that question is, how much risk do you want to take? How many other Hawks do you have? How many other Hornets do you have? So in a vacuum, I think they're both fine plays. Bembry is a better play. Harris is much lower owned and can randomly splash down some threes, and they give him irrational minutes. So, as you will. But it really depends on what else you have going.
Wall and Doncic or Kemba and Beal for a DK GPP?
Kemba and Beal will be much chalkier, so it's almost the same answer. I'm not being intentionally evasive, but it really depends on what else you have and how chalky you've been otherwise. But Kemba and Beal is going to be much higher owned than that other pairing. So, as you will, I'd probably be more inclined towards Kemba Beal myself, but it really depends on what else you're doing.
Is Giannis fadeable in FanDuel cash?
Yes, there's enough value to spend other places, and you are making the decision that. I would need to build a couple FanDuel cash lineups to say better. So my gut answer is yes, but let me clarify that as saying you can't build a dependable cash lineup everywhere else if you play Giannis. So if you build a cash lineup, you're like, I don't know, I had to squeeze in a lot of guys I'm not too happy about. So my guess is I would play him because I think there are enough guys who are low priced. Like I like Hoarder to produce at his price. I like Bembry. I like Markieff Morris. I like Marvin Williams or a couple of other cheap power forwards to be okay at their prices. Dwight Howard's under $7K at center. So I have a feeling you can make a decent cash lineup with Giannis in it. So I would be inclined to play him. But I don't think he is such a must that he is not fadeable. So if the question is simply, is he fadeable in cash? Yes, I believe he is.
LeVert or Middleton for DK cash?
Cash, I will take LeVert still.
Aminu or Morris for FanDuel cash?
I'll take Morris. Just playing a ton of minutes. He's going to play. We're basically at lock anyway, so you can give it up.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, FanDuel. See, again, another reason DK rules. FanDuel just rules. Steal your mascot and kill it like Air Force did to the Navy one or vice versa.
Yeah. Jacked up.
It's a terrible story. Poor bird.
Mascot theft is a real thing. Should be for having only one game. Should be a fairly compelling game of
Daddy like. What, Eddie? Tell us, what does Daddy like today?
Daddy likes Kit Kats. Sorry.
It's his the season.
Yeah, post Halloween candy. It's I'm gonna be wearing my girdle for a couple of weeks because it's cheap candy is. It is what it is. So yeah, let me see if we can pull up some in the
America's favorite game. The YouTube chat was demanding it. They don't like when they don't. I guess you did do it with Josh yesterday, but they don't like when they don't get their daddy likes.
Yeah, YouTube. I think it was you. Either you or Josh basically went, "Nah, I'm out of here." One of the one
Josh.
recently.
I ride along with daddy like. I think it's funny. It creeps me out, but it's funny.
I think it was Josh then. I apologize for conflating the two of you, but
Josh just spiked the football and he was like, I'm getting food. Fuck you.
Yeah, it was Josh. And I was just like, so a couple minutes of daddy like, I was like, nope, how about me going to get football? Last thoughts. And I'm like, okay, that's a strong position. Like, I respect you taking a strong position there, but
it's like prison. He's got to punch you in the face, so you know.
Yeah, exactly. You got to assert yourself. So, but yeah, people were like, what? Fuck that. So, looking at DK ownership, by the way, the DK, largest tournament is apparently the 500K Van Buren.
Yes.
So,
yeah, funny name for the day.
Yeah, so I guess election day, they decided to name tournaments. Like I saw there was a Truman, and I haven't seen anything else yet, but they apparently decided to name things after presidents. What I really want to know is, how the hell did Van Buren get the largest tournament of the day?
8th president, and it's the excellent 8th.
Washington, Ems, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Quincy Adams, Jackson, Van Buren. Yeah, okay.
That's why the Seinfeld episode where Kramer holds up the salt shaker, because that's the gang sign for the Van Buren boys. 8, I remember it.
Wow. Yeah, old Kinderhook, right? Am I getting my presidents right? Anyway, okay, good. Way to be on the spot with an answer to a pretty esoteric non-DFS based.
No, I'm glad that's where I excel. That's what I would have been a winner at Win Awesomos Money with that question.
Like, you handled the shit out of that question. Like, I hadn't made that connection. I was just like, how the hell did Van Buren get there? And that was way to like. I'm shocked by the alacrity with which you provided the correct answer to that question. That was
because I thought about it, because I looked at it and was like, Van Buren, like, why of all the people? And I was like, no shit, 8, of course.
Yeah, I just saw it 30 seconds ago, so for the first time, so I hadn't yet.
Yeah, it takes a while. Just me, it's like staring at a magic eye painting. You got to take some.
That's really good. Okay, hold on. Oh wow, they did the other thing too. Yeah, they did the other thing too. The Truman was the 33.
There you go.
Yeah,
pretty crafty by them.
That's not bad. That's not bad. That's there you go. You know what's best? I guarantee you, if someone wanted to make a 44 tonight, and they were like, if we call a tournament the Obama, we're going to have some very angry Southerners boycotting that tournament. Like, I guarantee you that conversation came up in that development room, which is awesome. But they were like, so, $44 tonight? People are like,
yeah.
I mean, they're in
Boston. You got to make a president that won't get boycotts. But Van Buren could have been awful.
Definitely no $45 tournament tonight. 44 would probably annoy people. Even like Bush.
Just 5 entrants.
The Clinton. Like, I almost want them to make a 41 or 40. Would 40 have been Clinton? I can't believe I can't figure this out. Okay, hold on. 45 is Trump. 42 is Clinton?
Yep.
Okay. So
and W is 43.
All right, so 40 would have been the Reagan. That's strong. They should have run the Reagan out there. That would have
been a prosperous economic time would be a logical name for a tournament, even though it might be divisive. Yeah. Wait, what is Daddy like? I'm fucking dying here. What's
Daddy trickle down economics? Daddy doesn't like. Let me tell you, it's a frequently proven. Oh, forget it. Number one ownership here, DeAndre Bembry, 37%. Yep, that's I think about what we expected.
Tough but fair.
Daddy's fine with it. Yeah, tough but fair. Trey Young, 29%. Daddy probably likes Trey Young at 29%. I think I'm still pretty happy if my Trey Young ownership is getting me over 30% of the field. I'm pretty happy with that number. Kevin,
everyone scores in the Clinton tournament. It's a good one, Ashley McDaniel. Well played.
Bravo.
The women of DFS coming through strong.
It'd be a little more accurate if everyone scored in the tournament, even if the other people in the tournament didn't want them to. But that's a whole other thing.
And everybody also just scores 5 points for the night, just knocking down
and
fives.
At the end of the tournament, you go back and go, I wasn't okay with him scoring. I didn't really score. Depends what score means. Kevin Huerter, 28%. Yeah, okay. Kemba Walker, 26%. Yeah, okay. Kent Bazemore, 24%. Yeah, okay. Batum, 19%. Yeah, that's all about what we expected. See, again, ownership machine. Strong ownership machine. Powerful. Jeremy Lamb, 13%. I think we had him for higher than that on DK.
Yes, I believe we did. A little. Actually, no, that was pretty close.
Really?
We had him at.
That was the only one I've seen that we weren't like pretty much right the hell on. Spellman, 8%. Yeah, Parker 7. Yeah, Dedmon 6. I think I legit like, but Monk 6, Len 5.5, Marvin Williams 5.3, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist 4.6.
Monk 6 worries me a little. I don't have him, and he could. This game is out of hand by the third quarter. It's gonna be Malik Monk day.
Yeah, well, we haven't gotten to Sweet Dick Willie yet. We're coming up on that. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, 4.6. Miles Bridges, 3.2. Cody Zeller, 3. I do like Cody Zeller, 3. I'll go that far. Jeremy Lin, 3%. We didn't talk about him real specifically, but the price is still real cute. Last game went back down to minutes in the teens. The two before that had like 24 minutes. Oh, that could certainly happen. It's a small slate. Sweet Dick Willie, 2% for Guillermo Hernan Gomez. Daddy like. That's pretty exciting stuff right there. Vince Carter, 1%. Didn't catch the start. That would have made him a little more interesting for me. I think that adds the minute upside to be a little more significant. Poitras, 0.5%. Torian Prince, 0.14%. Congratulations. You played yourself.
Torian supporters. I get it. I've been playing a lot of Torian too. And I would have played him tonight if I had a shot. Just trying to get him when he gets good again.
Yeah, I play a lot of Torians too. For the Horde! There you go.
On that note, let's close it out. Thank you guys for tuning in. Use the promo code Live Before Lock for all the ownership projections stuff that we referenced throughout the show. It is very helpful. We're going to point some out, but you want to get all of them. It'll help you get ahead of the field every single night. So go check that out. Also, rankings from Osmo himself, top DFS player in the world. Can't get much better than that. And I hope you guys voted today or didn't vote. To be honest, it's your American right, I think, but you should vote. But whatever, it's your fucking lives. I don't care.
Yeah, it's interesting. People are like, I can see both sides of that. Like, I'm a big fan of go vote. I said go vote repeatedly. I think people should vote. My perfect world, everyone understands all the bullshit and everyone votes. Like, there's a lot of uninformed voters voting against any reasonable interest, either sort of a national best for America interest because they don't understand it, or their own self-interest because they swallow a line from one side or the other, and they vote badly by any standard. I want everyone to vote, but I'd like people to know what the hell they're talking about. Even if they disagree with me, I'm happy if everyone understands all the things to be in the minority.
If you don't want to be a part of the process, hey, that's what America's about. You can be involved, you can not be involved. So good on you guys who did. And good on you guys who didn't. You showed up here. That's the real vote that counted. So give us another vote. Throw us a like.
Upvote. Yeah, I was about to say we got to pivot that into some bullshit.
Vote with your dollar. Sign up for awesomevote.com.
I really wish they had a Clinton tournament now. Damn it, DraftKings, you could have been awesome for a day. Like that would have been tremendous.
We'll petition them for next year. Things did not get political at all. Kick's good. That was a very agnostic. Everybody do what you want or don't do what you want. That can't get less political than that.
No, that is not a strong take.
No, that is a weak take in a world. I love hot takes. That's not one.
It's election day. I felt like I had to say something. Do something. Yeah, no, okay.
Look, hey, fuck it. You guys watch the show. We get to say things. That's the one trade-off we make. We're not trying to rail on anybody. It's fun. We're watching basketball. But things are real in life too. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys again soon. Good luck out there and happy election day.
Oh, I have to stop the stream. See, again.
You do. Strong whistle, though.
Well, I try to practice up for you.
The whistle go woo.